Welcome to the Kung Fu Mama Show. Today we have Lauren Carlson on the show today. She is a mother of three and has a degree in health science and also has certificates in victim advocacy. And she's also a survivor of sexual assault. And now she's helping the world here in advocating survivors of sexual assault and child trauma. Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
How are you today?
I'm wonderful, getting my kids to sleep, but as you are getting your kids to school.
Exactly. I love how we can still communicate through Zoom on our different time zones, and
Right.
learn about each other through across the world.
I know, it's amazing.
It is so amazing. So, can you tell us a little bit about why you think it's important for parents to raise their children and to understand consent?
Sure. So first, I like to explain that while most people understand consent to be um, the agreement for any sexual activity, I really like to generalize consent, go back even a step further and say that if parents understood consent to mean an agreement for anything to happen, it's
Hmm.
so much easier to have conversations with children younger. And then the understanding of that really can build on itself as a child goes off to school or becomes a teenager. So for me personally, I have always wanted my children to know that their opinion matters and that their body is their own
Hmm.
and that they're allowed to have opinions about it. So, as much as we would love our children to listen all the time and never
Right.
say no, but what we're really trying to do is empower them to know that they're important. So,
Hmm.
for me, I have spent years trying to help parents to be able to have those conversations sooner so that they're not actually big conversations. They're really just a way to teach your children that they know they're important.
Hmm. I see. So, what do you mean by exactly consent? So, how early on does that start, and what are you consenting for? Like,
So I like to say that you can have a conversation about consent with your child um, every single day if you are purposeful and you're trying to do it. So every time, my youngest is 4 now. Every time I tell her, no, mom's going to go to the bathroom by herself, see, I am asserting my own boundaries and I'm showing her it's okay for me to go in here. And, or every time I knock before I go into my 9-year old's room, even though she's still at an age where she shouldn't uh, be doing things that I shouldn't be able to walk in on. But every time I knock on her door and allow her the privacy, I am teaching her that her privacy is important and that I am asking for consent before I come into her room. So I think if we understand that their body is theirs, and we are teaching that through showing through like these examples I've just talked about. And every time I don't make a child hug me,
mhm,
or I don't make them hug another adult if they're not wanting to, an aunt or an uncle,
mhm,
and I'm allowing them to choose, then you're just having a conversation over and over again
mhm,
about consent and that your child is in charge of their own body.
mhm. And at what age do you think parents should start consent education?
So for my children, I never wasn't doing it. I just
Mhm,
know that as your child ages, their need for privacy will become different. My 4-year old still will ask me to help her when she's using the bathroom. So she is not asking for privacy yet. But very soon she will say, can I change my own clothes? Even though I know she can't, but I'm going to say sure until she comes to ask me for it or for help, because I do want to empower the need for privacy and, the knowing that she's allowed to ask for privacy. So if once you teach all of the basics of the foundation of your opinion matters, as your
Mhm.
children start to have questions about relationships, then you really can speak about what's appropriate touching or what's not. But if you start your children out by knowing that no one can touch them or see their body without their permission, then the conversation later about someone else's body will make so much more sense because they already know it about themselves.
Mhm. How do you actually talk to um, survivors of sexual assault? Do you consult them?
So uh, I have gone through training as a victim advocate. I do speak to survivors through universities here, talking to victims or speaking with friends of victims, how to be supportive to a victim of sexual assault.
Mhm.
I also actually am in the process of trying to start speaking to high schools and middle school students about assault and about how to prevent um, abuse to recognize an abusive situation.
Mhm.
Um, I am I also believe that every time I talk about my story, that
Mhm.
it is making it easier for other victims to come forward or to recognize it in their own life.
Mhm.
So I truly believe that every time I get to speak about what happened to me, even though that seems like a very strange way to think of it, that I am lucky that I get to speak about a traumatic experience, but I truly
Mhm.
do believe that I'm making it easier for other victims to come
Mhm.
forward every time I say it.
I totally agree. Like it's kind of like when you speak, they have the power to speak about it as well.
Right. And showing people that you can say, I'm the victim of rape or I'm the victim of assault without the um, the expected shame that should come with that.
Mm.
People are thrown off by it a little and they want to know more, really. And so I think that every time I say it, and I can say it without expecting it to be this huge where I know that it's a horrible thing, but I also, it's not something that ruined me. I do think it opens up the conversation and
Right.
gets people a little more aware. One, they're aware that it's happening, which of course it's happening, so let's say it. And
Right.
then two, I'm also inviting them to into a safe place where they can tell me or they can tell someone else because it doesn't
Yeah.
have to ruin you.
Right. Would you mind telling us your story?
Sure. So I was um, engaged when I was in college. I was 21 years old, and I had never had sex, and I was engaged. I'm still married. I'm married to my fiance at the time. And I was raped one night while I was unconscious. But I wasn't aware, and I didn't really know what to do. And um, it took many years for me to understand because my entire understanding of who to trust and who not to trust and what would happen and what I thought my life was going to be like while planning a wedding. It was very different. And it really changed who I was inside for a long time. But really, it was just my understanding of the world. So it has been more than 15 years now. And, um, and I, as I worked through it for so long, I really realized that my best use for what I know and what I can add is to help other children understand where that line is and how not to cross it, so that maybe I'm preventing it from happening to someone else.
So that must have been a difficult time for you and your fiance.
Yes.
And
Yes. My fiance knew him. This was someone that I had actually asked to walk me home. So I was in the process of trying to protect myself, and they took advantage of that. So it was very difficult for me to trust people and to understand. I was 21. I thought I knew everything. So it was very difficult for me. My husband and I, um, there was a long time where I just didn't speak about it.
mm,
And he knew that it had happened, and my parents knew it had happened, but I didn't really talk about it, and because I was embarrassed, and I thought that it would make them uncomfortable.
mhm.
And about 5 years ago, I told my husband, I don't really care if it's making you uncomfortable. I it's like telling someone who had a miscarriage that they shouldn't talk about it.
Mhm.
Because it might make you uncomfortable. So
Mhm.
I really have, and he's very supportive. We've gone through ups and downs through it. Obviously, he didn't want people to know it about me because he didn't
Mhm.
want them to look down on me, is what, which is completely understandable. He didn't want people to think things about me or know things about me. But he realizes that this is who I am now, and that this is a part of me feeling like I am using it for good, or using what I know for good. So
Mhm.
it was very difficult. We stayed engaged, obviously, and we got married. And we went through counseling at the very beginning, and then off and on throughout our marriage. We've been married for almost 15 years now. But yeah, it
Mhm.
was something that we had to go through. I
Right.
mean, there were times that I was suffering by myself, but then there were times that we had to do it together because, he was a part of it. I mean, he was there when it not there, but he was in the picture when it was happening.
So how in the name of consent and what
Right.
what happened to you, how would you be able to use that if you were, I guess more well versed in what consent means to you at the time?
Right. So I don't know what I could have done differently. Um, I really think that there will be people who are out to harm other people, and we can't always stop that.
Mhm.
I do think that if this person had known that someone who's unconscious cannot consent, that it wouldn't have happened. So really, the only way I could have stopped what I was doing is if someone had written my books or talked to children about it, which is what I do. So I
I see.
I there's nothing I could have done. People if people intend to harm people, they really can do it if they really want to. And I wish I could write a book, here's how never to be assaulted, but I can't do that
I
because
see.
that's not how the world works. But I can teach our girls and boys how to say no, and also how to hear no and
Right.
understand it and respect it.
So it's about educating the future generations
Right,
about
right,
understanding that there are boundaries and there are things that
right,
you need to that are private and
right, right. And
mhm.
understanding that you are not owed something, or you are not, it is not yours to take, even
Mhm.
if the opportunity presents itself. But yes, understanding that there was nothing else I could do
Right.
kind of scares me a little, but also it's empowering. I wasn't. I don't want to say that some victims there's things they could have done differently, but they're understanding that that you didn't do anything is really one
Right.
of the biggest things. It doesn't matter what I did. It doesn't matter that I was out drinking with people, or if I was out doing whatever. It doesn't matter, because nothing I did said, "Here, you should do this to me." It's
Right.
someone. I remember someone saying, "Well, what were you wearing?" And my husband said, he responded, "Well, she wasn't wearing a shirt that said, here, come do
Yeah,
this to me."
exactly.
So
Right.
it's stuff like that, understanding that I know I didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we have to educate boys and girls to understand how to hear no, just as much as we have to teach them how to say no.
Exactly. It's also just for so more people can also feel like that you've shared your story, and so they may also feel the same way that, oh, why do people um talk to me in a certain way, or if
Right.
they feel that, oh, well, maybe you could have done something, but there's really
Right.
like people out there to harm,
Right.
others.
Right. Predators will learn how to victimize if they would like to. And I can never stop that, as much as I wish I could. But we can prepare our children to know better,
Mm-hmm.
and then raise our children to not become one of those people. I truly do believe
Mm-hmm.
that people can be out there hurting others and not even really knowing that they're doing it. So
Right.
that's just what I want, is for the next generation to know better than we did.
And what are some tips you can give to other um, survivors of sexual assault on how to work through this trauma?
So I know that as a victim, everyone will say, "Here's what you should do." And I always say, you don't have to do anything. If you want to be sad for 10 years about it, you should be sad.
Mm-hmm.
It's a terrible
Right.
thing.
Right.
If you want to get up and never talk about it, you should do that. If you want to get up and hold signs, put and wear it on a shirt and tell everyone, then you should do that. Everyone heals in a completely different way.
Mm-hmm.
And my way is getting out and speaking about it and thinking that I can do something to change it. But I have full respect for people who never want to do that. No one
Mm-hmm.
has to tell their story. No one has to forgive their assaulter. Nothing. I say, heal in exactly the way you want to. I
Mm-hmm.
remember my mother getting up and saying, it's been a year, or you should feel better about this. And it's something that always stuck with me, that you should feel this, and you know what, I'm going to feel exactly what I feel, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone should talk about it if they want, and get help and reach out, but no one has to feel bad. I think the shame of, wow, this has been 15 years and I still think about it. There is shame even just in that. Like, why am I not over it yet? And then you get down on yourself. And it's okay. This is something that was a huge deal. And it's okay if it bothers you. And it's okay if it doesn't. And it's okay if you want to talk about it. And it's okay if you don't. But being okay right where you are is
Mm-hmm.
really the best thing for
Mm-hmm.
me, to
Mm-hmm.
tell victims, that you don't have to do anything. You don't have to come forward. You don't have to. What was done to you was terrible, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't owe anyone else anything.
That's so powerful. That is so powerful. And I'm glad that you are sharing your story and helping others, because I think that uh, if people reacting to this kind of situation, they'll always say, oh, what can I do to help? When can I do this or this,
Right.
that? And I think it's great to advocate, like, it's okay. This
Right.
has happened and I want to deal with it the way I want to deal with it. Don't,
Right.
you don't need to overly do anything.
Right. And you don't have to be okay. I've told my husband that sometimes I just want you to say, we can leave. Are you uncomfortable? We'll leave. Because there are times where this is not, I'm triggered by something and he doesn't understand it. And I think being a good support for a victim is just always understanding they're going through more things in your head than you know. So my husband will routinely, if I look uncomfortable, he'll say, "You okay?" And I know what he's asking,
Mhm.
and I'll say yes, or I'd like to leave, and that's a powerful thing that he doesn't have to understand why, but I'm uncomfortable, and if it's on TV or if it's in a movie or something, and he'll just be like, "You want to turn this off?" And I love that because
Yeah.
it's the best way to say he doesn't understand it. He's not triggered by this. He could very easily ignore that I seem uncomfortable, but
Mhm.
it's a very easy way to make a victim feel supported
Mhm.
because I may never stop being triggered by certain things.
Mhm.
And it's powerful to know that someone, a friend or a husband or a mother or someone, knows me well enough to know that, and they're okay with that.
I love that. I love that. Thank you to your husband.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
Yeah, we're getting there. It wasn't what he signed up for, but you know what? Me neither. So
Exactly. Um, so can you tell us more about how kids can learn to respect their own and other kids' boundaries?
So I like to make sure that every kid understands there's two parts of consent. I think everyone talks about you can say no, but not enough people are talking about when you hear no.
Mhm.
So I always like to understand that your body, or to make a child understand your body is your own. Your feelings are your own. You're
Mhm.
allowed to say, I don't want to play that way.
Right.
So, emotional and physical boundaries are important. And to say, I like to talk about examples of a child knocking over someone else's blocks and
Mhm.
saying, I don't really like that. And you're allowed to say, I don't want to play that way. And if someone keeps doing it, then here's what we should do to
Mhm.
to stop the situation. So what you have just done to a 4-year-old is you have spelled out what a sexual assault example looks like for a 14-year-old, except you've just said it in a 4-year-old language, in a 4-year-old example. So if someone is doing something that bothers you physically or even emotionally, you're allowed to say no. And then look, let's talk about what the examples are.
Mhm.
What would you do next?
Right.
Um, at that age, I like to talk about trusted adults. So every child under 4 really should have 4 or 5 trusted adults. So someone that you and your child have talked about, that this is someone they would go to if they're really not sure about something. And we talk about, is it your bus driver, or is it the person at the grocery store, or is it your grandma and grandpa? And it's going to be different for every kid, but it's also really important to know and to talk about the idea that it's not someone you see all the time, because not
Mhm.
all adults are your trusted adult. You can trust people,
Right.
but they're not the person you go to when you are really unsure about something.
Mhm.
And it is important to talk about these things with your children,
Right.
because you may have a kid who's like the mailman because he sees him all the time and he's so nice and we wave at him. But
Right. Right.
it is important to talk about those things and to say, who would you go to? And to understand that with those trusted adults, if there's something with one of those adults that you're not sure about, that's why you have the other ones. So that's why you come to me or you come to this other person,
Right.
because but like I said, predators will victimize as they can. And
Right.
so it is important to recognize that within those trusted adults, there is still a check and balance system where
Mm-hmm.
you're still checking on all those other things. So talking to your children about one, here's all the things that you're allowed to say no to. And also everyone else is allowed to say no to them. And
Mm-hmm.
then go further and say, what would you do if this happened? Because everyone says, well, just say no. But then what's next?
Right.
You say no to a situation and then
Mm-hmm.
what, they just expect it to stop? Or so you have to play out the situation. What if someone doesn't stop? Okay, what do you do next? You find your adult, am I not there? So, and you play out these situations. And if you talk about these things and children know how to problem solve like this about these real life situations, then they're a lot more ready to deal with these things when they come up.
So how can we differentiate between, what's acceptable and what's not?
So one thing that I always say is the children know when they are uncomfortable.
Mm.
So I have told my children that it really doesn't matter what they think is okay if
Mm-hmm.
someone else has said, I don't want you to do that. So if I have three children and they are all very different personalities, and I have one who does not like to cuddle she's not a hugger, and that's okay. And so I will not treat her the same way as I do my oldest and my youngest. She does not come and lay in bed with me. She does not want me to play with her hair while we're watching TV. And and I like to highlight all of these differences between them, because when you go out into the world, everyone has different desires and different levels of comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And for a child this young, they know when they're uncomfortable and they'll tell you. So if there are adults who are attempting to abuse them or start the grooming process leading towards abuse, your child will usually know this is inappropriate. I don't feel comfortable. Something seems strange. And that's why then we go to the trusted adults and say, hey, mom or dad, I'm not really sure about this because I felt uncomfortable. And so I think that when we are allowing children the the understanding that their opinion matters and
Mm-hmm.
that they are the ones to know, if someone's abusing a really young child, they won't be able to understand that. But when a child is 5 or 6, they know when things are strange. So they know when something is not okay with them. And inviting them to bring that information to you is really the best way to make sure that it doesn't go further.
Mm. So how can we teach our children to say no? I feel like a lot of them intentionally say no all the time. but
Right,
but maybe past that stage.
right. So I think that having a conversation with your children, and they truly do know that their body is their own, we are starting the conversation of you don't have to be uncomfortable just because an adult or someone in charge is doing something, and that you think that this maybe you're just the one who is unsure about the situation. So if we start the conversation with them and say, every day when we say, I'm asking for privacy, and we're teaching them how to ask for privacy and how to say no. If someone says, can I sit on your lap? And I say, you know what, I've had a really hard day. Could you just sit next to me? I'm inviting them, they're watching me
Mm-hmm.
say, no, thank you, or no, not right now. And
Mm-hmm.
and I'm showing them how to do that and how to say no.
Mm-hmm.
But really, if we're wanting to keep our children out of harm,
Mm-hmm.
what we're really wanting is for them to say no, but then also to do the things after, because
Mm-hmm.
they could say no 100 times. But what we're really wanting is to get them to bring that information to us. So the more we open up and communicate, understand their feelings, and let them know that they can come to us, that's really where we're going to stop abuse before it happens or soon after.
Great. Okay, so can you also tell me, you've written several books. Can you tell us a little bit
Right.
about them?
Right. So I have written, I wrote a workbook series called Consent for Kids,
Mm-hmm.
and it is intended to be used in schools. It's separated by grade levels. I don't know what grade levels in America or are kindergarten through. So we start with kindergarten, so
Yep. Yeah.
K to 2, and
Mm-hmm.
then we have 3 to 5, and then we have 6 to 8.
Mm-hmm.
It's separated into 3 different books, and it's a workbook that really invites a conversation between a student and about thinking about how we can respect ourselves and have other people respect us.
Mm-hmm.
So I've written those, and some people
Wonderful.
do use these workbooks at home. I've tested them out on my children. So there's just fun activities,
Right.
circle healthy behaviors and circle unhealthy behaviors and things like that. Um, then I wrote a children's book called My Body is My Own, which
Mm-hmm.
is very close to my heart because I actually illustrated it also. And I think it's just the perfect way for children and adults to begin a conversation of, hey, maybe I shouldn't make you do something, or maybe I want to say no, and it's okay because my body is my own.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is something that I wrote during.
Wow.
It's been in the works for a long time, but I'm extra proud of that one because it's close to my heart.
And you illustrated it, so that's amazing.
Yes,
You're an artist.
yes.
Is that your
Thank you.
artwork behind as well? Or
Yes, yes.
wow, that's beautiful. I noticed that right
Thank
away
you.
when we started talking.
Thank
That's
you.
so cool.
Yes. I've been I do all kinds of stuff. I think I have creativity coming from everywhere, and my husband's like, you should just focus that somewhere. But but so yes,
It's
the
hard to
paintings
focus when
in my
you're
book.
creative.
Oh, I know. So the yes, the paintings in that book are mine, and I really wanted I chose a very multicultural um you know images because I want everyone to know that they have the right to say no, and that
Mhm.
everyone should be respected. Boys and girls both can be victimized, and both can be victimizers. We're
Right.
supposed to teach everyone
Mhm.
to respect others, and that also they should be respected. And so it was important to me because it's not a girl issue, and it's not a little kid issue, and it's not just about boys doing this. It's really everyone needs to understand that we all need to respect everyone.
Wonderful. And on that note, thank you so much for being on the show. And how can our listeners find you?
I have a website called Imperfectly Bold, imperfectlybold.com. And then my books are available on Amazon and then also on my website. So Lauren K. Carlson, or my website, imperfectlybold.com.
Wonderful. And thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for listening, everyone. Don't forget to follow at Kung Fu Mama Show at IG, Facebook, and then our YouTube at Starring Sarah Chang. Thank you so much.